Part 2, Dissolving the Barriers. We want to know what is going on inside us so we can know what to let go. Instead of hiding our pain, we can release it totally. Chapter 5, Understanding the Blocks That Bind You. Chronic patterns of self-hate, guilt, and self-criticism raise the body's stress levels and weaken the immune system. Now that we understand a little more about the power that we have within us, let's take a look at what keeps us from using it. I think that almost all of us have barriers of some kind or another. Even when we do a lot of work on ourselves and clear out the blocks, new layers of old barriers still keep coming up. Many of us feel so flawed that we believe that we are not good enough and never will be. Again, if we find something wrong with us, then we are going to find something wrong with other people as well. If we are still continuing to say, "I can't do this because my mother said or my father did," then we have not yet grown up. So now you want to let your barriers go and perhaps learn something different that you didn't know before now. Perhaps one sentence here will trigger a new thought. Can you imagine how wonderful it would be if every day you learned a new idea that would help you let go of the past and create harmony in your life? When you become aware and understand the individual process of life, you will know what direction to take. If you put your energies into learning something about yourself, you will eventually see those problems and issues that you need to dissolve. We all have challenges in life. Everybody does. Nobody goes through life without them. Otherwise, what would be the purpose of coming to this particular school called Earth? For some, there are health challenges, and for other people, there are relationship challenges, or career, or financial challenges. Some have a little or a lot of everything. I think one of our biggest problems is that most of us haven't the faintest idea of what it is we want to let go. We know that it's not working, and we know what we want in our life, yet we don't know what's holding us back. So let's take time to look at the blocks that bind us. If you think for a moment about your own patterns and problems and the things that hold you back, which categories do they fall into? Criticism, fear, guilt, or resentment? I call these categories the Big Four. Which is your favorite one? Mine was a combination of criticism and resentment. Maybe you are like me and have two or three. Is it fear that always comes up, or guilt? Are you very, very critical or resentful? Let me point out that resentment is anger that is stuffed down. So if you believe you are not allowed to express your anger, then you have stored a lot of resentment. We cannot deny our feelings. We cannot conveniently ignore them. When I had my cancer diagnosis, I had to look very clearly at myself. I had to acknowledge some nonsense that I didn't want to admit about myself. For instance, I was a very resentful person, and I carried a lot of bitterness from the past. I said, "Louise, you have no time to indulge in that anymore. You really must change." Or, as Peter McWilliams says, you can no longer afford the luxury of a negative thought. Your experiences always reflect your inner beliefs. You can literally look at your experiences and determine what your beliefs are. Maybe it's disturbing to consider, but if you look at the people in your life, they are all mirroring some belief you have about yourself. If you are always being criticized at work, it is probably because you are critical and have become the parent who once criticized the child. Everything in our lives is a mirror of who we are. When something is happening out there that is not comfortable, we have an opportunity to look inside and say, how am I contributing to this experience? What is it within me that believes I deserve this? We all have family patterns, and it is very easy for us to blame our parents or our childhood or our environment, but that keeps us stuck. We don't become free. We remain victims, and we perpetrate the same problems over and over again. So it really doesn't matter what anybody else did to you or what they taught you in the past. Today is a new day. You are now in charge. Now is the moment in which you are creating the future in your life and your world. It really doesn't matter what I say either, because only you can do the work. Only you can change the way you think and feel and act. I'm just saying that you can. You definitely can, because you have a higher power within you that can help you break free from these patterns if you allow it. You can remind yourself that when you were a little baby, you loved yourself for who you were. There is not one little baby who criticizes its body and thinks, oh, my hips are too big. Babies are thrilled and delighted just because they have bodies. They express their feelings. When a baby is happy, you know it. And when a baby is angry, the whole neighborhood knows it. They are never afraid to let people know how they feel. They live in the moment. And you were like that once. As you grew up, you listened to people around you, and you learned about fear and guilt and criticism from them. If you grew up in a family where criticism was the norm, then you are going to be critical as an adult. If you grew up in a family where you were not allowed to express anger, then you are probably terrified of anger and confrontation, and you swallow it and let it reside in your body. If you were raised in a family where everybody was manipulated by guilt, then you are probably going to be the same way as an adult. You are probably a person who runs around saying, "I'm sorry," all the time, and can never ask for anything outright. You feel you have to be manipulative in some way in order to get what you want. As we grow up, we begin to pick up these false ideas and lose touch with our inner wisdom. So we really need to release these ideas and return to the purity of spirit where we truly love ourselves. We need to reestablish the wonderful innocence of life and the moment-by-moment joy of existence, the same joy that a baby feels in its blissful state of wonder. Think of what you want to become true for yourself. State them in positive, not negative affirmations. Now go to the mirror, look in your eyes, and repeat your affirmations. See what obstacles are in your way. When you begin to state an affirmation like, "I love and approve of myself," really pay attention to what negative messages come up, because as you recognize them, they become the treasures that will unlock the door to your freedom. Usually the messages are one of the four I mentioned earlier: criticism, fear, guilt, or resentment. And most likely you learn these messages from people back there. Some of you have chosen some difficult tasks to handle in this lifetime, and it is my belief that we really come here to love ourselves in spite of what they say or do. We can always go beyond our parents' or our friends' limitations. If you were a good little girl or boy, you learned your parents' limited way of looking at life. You see, you're not bad. You are good children. You learned exactly what your parents taught you. Now that you are grown up, you're doing the same thing. How many of you hear yourself saying what your parents used to say? Congratulations. They were very good teachers and you were very good students. But now it is time for you to begin to think for yourself. A lot of us may face resistance when we look in the mirror and repeat our affirmations. However, resistance is the first step to change. Most of us want our lives to change, but when we are told that we have to do something different, we say, "Who, me? Oh, I don't want to do that." Others may experience feelings of despair. Often if you look in the mirror and say, "I love you," the little child inside says, "Where have you been all this time? I've been waiting for you to notice me." And waves of sadness come up because you've been rejecting the little child for a long, long time. When I did this exercise in one of my workshops, a woman said she was very, very scared. I asked her what frightened her, and she shared the fact that she was an incest survivor. Many of us have had this experience called incest, and we are learning to come through it. It's interesting that it occurs so often on our planet. We read so much about incest these days, yet I don't think it is happening any more now than it ever did. We have advanced to a state where we now feel that children have rights, and we are allowing ourselves to see this ugly sore in society. In order to release the problem, we have to first recognize it, and then we can work through it. Therapy is so important for incest survivors. We need a safe space where we can work through these feelings. When we have let the anger and the rage and the shame out, then we can move to the space where we can love ourselves. No matter what we are working on, we want to remember that the feelings that come up are just feelings. We are not in the experience anymore. We need to work on making the inner child feel safe. We want to thank ourselves for having had the courage to survive this experience. Sometimes when we're dealing with an issue such as incest, it's difficult to accept that the other person was doing the best he or she could at the time with the understanding and awareness and knowledge that they had. Acts of violence always come from people who were violated themselves. We all need healing. When we learn to love and cherish who we are, we will no longer harm anyone. Stop all criticism. When we are dealing with criticism, we are usually criticizing ourselves all the time for the same things over and over. When are we going to wake up and learn that criticism doesn't work? Let's try another tactic. Let's approve of ourselves as we are right now. Critical people often attract a lot of criticism because it is their pattern to criticize. What we give out, we get back. They may also need to be perfect at all times. Who's perfect? Have you ever met a perfect person? I haven't. If we complain about another person, we are really complaining about some aspect of ourselves. Everyone is a reflection of us, and what we see in another person, we see in ourselves. Many times we don't want to accept parts of who we are. We abuse ourselves with alcohol or drugs or cigarettes or overeating or whatever. These are ways of beating up on ourselves for not being perfect. But being perfect for who? Whose early demands and expectations are we still trying to meet? Be willing to let that go. Just be. You will find that you are wonderful just as you are this very moment. If you have always been a critical person who sees life through very negative eyes, it is going to take time for you to turn yourself around to be more loving and accepting. You will learn to be patient with yourself as you practice letting go of the criticism, which is only a habit, not the reality of your being. Can you imagine how wonderful it would be if we could live our lives without ever being criticized by anyone? we would feel totally at ease, totally comfortable. Every morning would be a wonderful new day because everyone would love you and accept you, and nobody would criticize you or put you down. You can give this happiness to yourself by becoming more accepting of the things that make you unique and special. The experience of living with yourself can be the most wonderful experience imaginable. You can wake up in the morning and feel the joy of spending another day with you. When you love who you are, you automatically bring out the best in you. I'm not saying that you will be a better person, because that implies that you're not good enough now. However, you will find more positive ways to fulfill your needs and to express more of who you really are. Guilt makes us feel inferior. Many times people give you negative messages because it is the easiest way to manipulate you. If someone is trying to make you feel guilty, ask yourself, what do they want? Why are they doing this? Ask these questions instead of inwardly agreeing, oh yes, I'm guilty, I must do what they say. Many parents manipulate their children with guilt because they were raised that way. They tell lies to the children to make them feel less than. Some people are still manipulated by their relatives and friends when they grow up because, first of all, they don't respect themselves. Otherwise, they wouldn't let it happen. Secondly, they are manipulative themselves. Many of you live under a cloud of guilt. You always feel wrong, or that you are not doing the right thing, or apologizing to someone for something. You will not forgive yourself for something you did in the past. You berate yourself for a lot that goes on in your life. Let these clouds dissipate. You don't need to live that way any longer. Those of you who feel guilty can now learn to say no and call people on their nonsense. I'm not saying to be angry with them, but you don't have to play their game anymore. If saying no is new to you, say it very simply. No, no, I cannot do that. Don't give excuses, or the manipulator will have ammunition to talk you out of your decision. When people see that manipulating you doesn't work, they will stop. People will only control you as long as you allow them to. You may feel guilty the first time you say no. However, it gets easier the next few times. A woman at one of my lectures had a baby who was born with a congenital heart disease. She felt guilty because she'd believed that it was her fault. She did something to the baby. Unfortunately, guilt does not solve anything. In her case, no one did anything wrong. I told her that I thought it could have been a soul choice for the baby and a lesson for both the mother and baby. My answer for her was to love the baby and love herself and stop feeling that she did something wrong. That sort of guilt would not heal anyone. If you do something that you are sorry about, stop doing it. If you did something in the past that you still feel guilty about, forgive yourself. If you can make amends, do it, and don't repeat the action again. Every time guilt comes up in your life, ask yourself, what do I still believe about myself? Who am I trying to please? Notice the childhood beliefs that come up. When somebody comes to me who's been involved in a car accident, there is usually guilt on a deep-seated level and a need for punishment. There can also be a lot of repressed hostility because we feel we don't have the right to speak up for ourselves. Guilt seeks punishment, so we can literally become our own judge, jury, and executioner, condemning ourselves to a self-imposed prison. We punish ourselves, and there is no one around to come to our defense. It's time to forgive ourselves and set ourselves free. One elderly lady at one of my seminars felt enormous guilt about her middle-aged son. He was an only child who grew up to be a very withdrawn person. She felt guilty because she was very strict with him while he was growing up. I explained that she had done the best she knew how to do at the time. I believe he chose her as a mother before he incarnated into this lifetime, so on a spiritual level he knew what he was doing. I told her that she was wasting all her energy feeling guilty about something that she couldn't change. She sighed and said, "It's such a shame that he's this way, and I'm sorry I did a bad job." Now you see, that's wasted energy because it doesn't help her son now, and it certainly doesn't help her. Guilt becomes a very heavy burden and makes people feel inferior. Instead, I told her that every time the feeling came up, she could say something like, "No, I don't want to feel that way anymore. I'm willing to learn to love myself. I accept my son exactly as he is." If she continued to do this, the pattern would start to shift, and she would free both of them. Even if we don't know how to love ourselves, the fact that we are willing to love ourselves will create the difference. It's just not worth it to hold on to these old patterns. The lesson is always love yourself. Her lesson was not to heal her son, but to love herself. He came into this life to love himself. She can't do it for him, and he can't do it for her. Organized religions are often really good at making people feel guilty. Many of them do some heavy numbers to keep people in line, especially when they are young. However, we aren't little children anymore, and we don't have to be kept in line. We are adults who can decide what we want to believe. The child in us feels the guilt, but there is also the adult in us who can teach the child otherwise. When you hold your emotions down or hold things in, you create havoc within you. Love yourself enough to allow yourself to feel your emotions. Allow your feelings to come to the surface. At first, you may find yourself crying for days or getting angry a lot. You may have to process quite a bit of old stuff. I suggest you do affirmations that make going through the process easier, smoother, and more comfortable, such as, "I now release with ease all old negative beliefs. It is comfortable for me to change. My pathway is now smooth. I am free of the past." Also, don't add judgment to your feelings. That only pushes the feelings down even more. If you are going through incredible dilemmas or crises, affirm that you are safe and that you are willing to feel. Affirming these positive feelings will bring about beneficial changes. Chapter 6. Letting your feelings out. A tragedy can turn out to be our greatest good if we approach it in ways from which we can grow. Releasing anger in positive ways. Everyone deals with anger at one time or another in their lives. Anger is an honest emotion. When it is not expressed or processed outwardly, it will be processed inwardly, in the body, and usually develops into a dis-ease or dysfunction of some sort. Like criticism, we usually get angry about the same things over and over again. When we are angry and we feel we don't have a right to express it, we swallow it down, which causes resentment, bitterness, or depression. So it's good to handle our anger when it comes up. There are several methods to deal with anger in positive ways. One of the best is to talk openly to the person with whom you are angry and to release the pent-up emotions. You can say, "I am angry with you because..." When we feel like screaming at someone, then the anger has been building up for a long time. Often it is because we feel we cannot speak to the other person. So the second best way to let the anger out is to talk to the person in the mirror. Find yourself a place where you will feel safe and will not be disturbed. Look into your own eyes in the mirror. If you find that you cannot, then concentrate on your mouth or nose. See yourself and/or the person who you believe has done something wrong to you. Remember the moment when you became angry and let yourself feel the anger come through you. Begin to tell this person exactly what you are so angry about. Show all the anger you feel. You could say something like, "I am angry at you because," or "I am hurt because you did," or "I am so afraid because you." Just get all your feelings out. If you feel like expressing yourself physically, then get some pillows and start hitting them, or twist a towel. Don't be afraid to let your anger take its natural course. You have already kept your feelings bottled up too long. There is no need to feel any guilt or shame. Remember, our feelings are thoughts in action. They serve a purpose, and when you let them loose from your mind and body, you allow space inside for other, more positive experiences. When you have finished expressing your anger to the other person or persons, do your best to forgive them. Forgiveness is an act of freedom for yourself because you are the one who will benefit from it. If you can't forgive someone, then the exercise is just a negative affirmation and is not healing for you. There is a difference between releasing and just rehashing old angers. You may want to say something like, "Okay, that situation is over. That is in the past now. I don't approve of your action, and yet I understand that you were doing the best you could with the knowledge and understanding you had at the time. I am done with this. I release you and let you go. You are free, and I am free." You may want to do this exercise several times before you truly feel that you have gotten rid of all your anger. You may also want to work on one anger issue or several. Do what feels right for you. There are other methods we can use to release the anger. We can scream into a pillow. We can kick pillows. We can beat the bed or a punching bag. We can write a hate letter and then burn it. We can scream in our cars with the windows rolled up. We can play tennis or go to the golf range and just hit balls one after another. We can exercise, swim, or run around the block several times, or just punch the air. We can write or draw our feelings using our non-dominant hand. The creative process is a natural release for emotions. One man at my seminar said he used an egg timer as he began screaming into a pillow. He gave himself 10 minutes to let out all his frustrations and anger about his father. After 5 minutes, he was exhausted, and every 30 seconds he would look at the egg timer and realize he still had a few more minutes to go. I used to beat the bed and make a lot of noise. I can't do that now because my dogs get frightened and think I'm angry at them. Now I find it very effective to scream in the car or dig a hole in the garden or bat a ball around. As you can see, you can become quite creative when releasing your feelings. I recommend that you do something physically to release charged up emotions in a safe way. Don't be reckless or dangerous to yourself or others. Remember also to communicate with your higher power. Go within and know that there is an answer to your anger and that you will find it. It is very healing to meditate and visualize your rage flowing freely out of your body. Send love to the other person and see your love dissolve whatever disharmony there is between you. Be willing to become harmonious. Perhaps the anger you feel is reminding you that you aren't communicating well with others. By recognizing it, you can correct it. It's amazing how many people tell me how much happier they have become once they release anger towards another person. It's as though a huge burden has been dropped. One of my students had a difficult time letting her anger out. Intellectually, she understood her feelings, yet she couldn't express them outwardly. Once she allowed herself this expression, she kicked and screamed and called her mother and her alcoholic daughter all sorts of names. She felt a tremendous weight lift from her. When her daughter visited her afterwards, she couldn't stop hugging her. She had allowed room for love to come inside, where all the repressed anger had been. Maybe you have been a person who's been angry for a major part of your life. You have what I call habitual anger. Something happens and you get angry. Something else happens and you get angry again. Once more it happens and you keep getting angry, but you never go beyond getting angry. Habitual anger is childish. You always want your own way. It would be helpful to ask yourself, why am I choosing to be angry all the time? What am I doing to create situation after situation that angers me? Is this the only way I can react to life? Is this what I want? Who am I still punishing or loving? Why do I want to be in this state? What am I believing that causes all these frustrations? What am I giving out that attracts in others the need to irritate me? In other words, why do you believe that to get your way, you need to get angry? I'm not saying that there are no injustices, and there aren't times when you have a right to feel angry. However, habitual anger is not good for your body because it lodges in there. Notice what you focus on most of the time. Sit in front of a mirror and look at yourself and ask, who are you? What is it that you want? What makes you happy? What can I do to make you happy? Now is the time to do something else. Create a new space inside yourself for loving, optimistic, and cheerful patterns. People often get angry while they're driving their cars. People often express their frustrations about the other lousy drivers on the road. Long ago, I got over the fact that I was going to be upset because of someone else's inability to follow the rules of the road. So the way I handle driving my car is, first, I put love into the car when I get in. Next, I know and affirm that I'm always surrounded by wonderful, competent, happy drivers. Everyone around me is a good driver. Because of my beliefs and affirmations, whenever I'm on the road, I have very few poor drivers around me. They're off bothering the person who's shaking his fist and screaming. You know, your car is an extension of you, just like everything and everyone are extensions of you. So put some love into your car, and then send love out to everyone around you on the streets and highways. I believe that the parts of your car are similar to the parts of your body. For instance, one of my workers felt that she had no vision, that she could not see where her life was going or where she wanted it to go. One morning she woke up and found her windshield smashed. Another person, an acquaintance of mine, felt that he was stuck in his life. He was not moving forward or moving backward, but was not moving at all. And his tire became flat and he couldn't move anywhere. I know it may sound silly at first, but it's fascinating to me that the terminology that these two people used to describe their current mental state also related to their car. Having no vision means that you can't see in front of you. The windshield is a perfect metaphor. Likewise, being stuck is a perfect example of a flat tire. The next time something happens to your car, make a note as to what you feel the broken parts represents and see if you can connect it to how you are feeling at that particular moment or what is going on in your life. You may be surprised at the results. One day I will write a little book and call it Heal Your Automobile. There was a time when people did not understand the body-mind connection. Now it is time for us to expand our thinking even more and to understand the machinery-mind connection. Every situation in your life is a learning experience and can be handled so that it works for you. There is nothing new or unique about anger. No one escapes the experience. The key is in recognizing it for what it is and taking that energy in a healthier direction. If you get sick, don't get angry over it. Instead of putting anger into your body, fill it with love and forgive yourself. Those of you who are caretakers for sick people can also remember to take care of yourselves too. If you don't, you won't be any good to yourself or your friends or family. You will burn out. Do something to let your feelings out as well. Once you learn to deal with anger in a positive way that readily benefits you, you will find many wonderful changes occurring in the quality of your life. Resentment causes a variety of ills. Resentment is anger that has been buried for a long time. The main problem with resentment is that it lodges in the body, usually in the same place, and in time it seethes and eats away at the body and often turns into tumors and cancers. Therefore, repressing anger and letting it settle in our bodies is not conducive to good health. Again, it's time to let those feelings out. Many of us were raised in families where we weren't allowed to be angry. Women, in particular, were taught that to be angry was something bad. Anger was not acceptable, except for one person, usually a parent. So we learned to swallow our anger rather than express it. Again, we can now realize that we are the ones who are holding on to it. Nobody else is involved at all.